Earlier this month, Montgomery County Public Schools announced its updated cell phone policy in schools. After several months of debate, phones will be allowed during lunch and between classes for high schoolers, and middle and elementary school students will adhere to an away all day policy. I'm your host, Andréa Durán, and we are joined by Rainer Kuhlenkampf, one of MCEA's cell phone policy working group co-chairs, and Jeremy Joseph, a parent advocate and co-author of the letter in support of away all day cell phone policy at MCPS that garnered almost 2,000 signatures. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
So, Jeremy, you have a child currently at MCPS attending Walt Whitman High, is that correct?
That's correct.
So why are you so passionate about advocating for this? So,
big picture, right? The phones are causing a huge mental health crisis for kids and adults too, but I'm focused on the kids. Hospital admission rates, self-harm, clinical depression, through the roof, and it's not a factor of the pandemic, it's a factor of the phones. It started when the phones became sort of ubiquitous and has only grown ever since. My daughter was one of the kids who was in that sort of cusp group when kids were getting their phones in 4th grade and 5th grade, and we saw the effect that this was having on her, on the friend group, and on the schools, right? And so I've been a passionate advocate to delay adoption of phones and social media for kids generally. In the schools, I've had the chance to go into the schools, and I've seen the effect at the high school level of how the phones are being used and misused in the classroom. So we went there, it was an open house, it was a great thing. The teachers are spending fully 22% of a 45-minute class period dealing with phones. And this was in a bunch of different classes in a bunch of different situations. And so my perspective is the phones have no place whatsoever in the classroom, and we've been thrilled, and so we've been fighting to, maybe not fighting, we've been advocating for a very clear and comprehensive policy that MCPS should adopt to keep phones out of school bell to bell, right, away all day. And the policy that they introduced in elementary schools and middle schools is a great step, but it's the wrong policy for high schools, and I can go into that more in detail.
We'll go into that more in detail. What I want to sort of elaborate on right now are that, you know, you're talking about the effects of the mental health effects, as well as the sort of cumbersome, you know, teachers addressing cell phones in school. So what exactly does that look like? Because you just said about, you know, 22% of class time is devoted to addressing phones. What does that mean?
Sure, that's a great question. Thanks for the specificity. So the phones distract the kids, right, in the classroom, and they prevent the kids in between classes and at lunch from making eye contact and sort of having those new opportunities to make new friends and make different friends outside of their electronic sort of world. And the time they spend on the phones, the data shows, and there's a great survey done by the National Teachers Group that shows that the only policy that works to keep the distraction of phones at bay is an away all day policy. And so that's from first bell to last bell, because that gives the kids the chance to take a step back from their phones, focus on each other, focus on the teachers, listen. And the thing that drives the difference there by having the phones put away is when somebody is on a phone in between classes and texting what happened in his first period or second period, everybody else needs to be on their phones as well to be able to keep up with what's going on. And because as a kid, you don't want to be out of the loop, right? And so the only way that kids can have space and peace from being on their phones is if they're put away from the first bell to the last bell. The last thing I'll say is the phones are a tool that drive bullying and fights in schools. We've seen this at a bunch of schools, and the data is very clear that when you get rid of the phones, the bullying goes down and the fights go down, because there's no point in fighting if you can't film it. And this happened at Hardy Middle School previously, where they banned the phones, and fights sort of absolutely almost stopped overnight. And so there's many reasons why getting rid of the phones is very important to me and to the community I represent. But the most important thing is it's best for the kids and for the learning. Test scores and the academic performance has gone down year over year for the last several years, despite increasing investment and increasing focus on academics. That wasn't a factor of the pandemic. That's largely a factor of the phones.
Oh, really? So you're saying that that is all because of the phones?
It's a huge driver. That the data shows that from basically 2010, when phones started becoming more prevalent, this isn't just happening in Maryland. It's happening nationally. It's happening globally as well. And there's a whole generation of kids that are being left behind academically because it's really hard to focus when you have a dinging device in your pocket.
Gotcha. So Reiner, you are here on behalf of MCEA, which
Correct.
is a teachers union.
Yes.
So MCEA advocated for the away all day policy for younger students, right? Elementary and middle school students. But as Jeremy mentioned, it had a slightly less strict policy for high school students. Can you elaborate on why that is?
So MCEA is made of about 14,000 educators, certified in counselors, teachers, staff development teachers, speech pathologists, to name a few. And they came together and they put the work group together because they felt that there was this urgent need around student well-being and some learning around cell phones in the classroom. They also saw that MCPS was running up some pilots, and they saw that a policy was about to be changed, and we decided that we'd put together a policy that would back the voice of educators and have an influence on that policy. The reason, the way it worked out is we kind of had a resolution debate, and there were substitute teachers in the room, there were elementary school teachers, middle school, and high school teachers. And then we also did some Zooms. And the overwhelming belief was that to push forward an idea that would effectively impact students is to kind of roll it out. The idea that kind of just quote here, MCA strongly urges MCPS to universally and consistently implement and enforce a phased transition to an MCPS environment free of cell phones and other personal mobile devices during instructional hours. So kind of key there is this phased transition. And yeah, so that's kind of the direction we were going.
So in order to implement something that has to be enforced countywide with a really diverse group of students, teachers, you had this resolution so that it's kind of like a stepping stone. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. Part of the original idea is that MCPS would implement a plan. And the union can only kind of make suggestions and speak. They're the decision makers, and they're working collaboratively and kind of calling us in and listening to us, which is really great, and it feels good to be a part of that. So yeah, the phase transition will kind of allow them to evaluate that, look at the implications of the new cell phone policy. Is it inequitably impacting kids who have kind of historically been kind of a target of a lot of disciplinary practices, or kids who are not succeeding very well in school, and is it working? And then kind of roll out from that data or that information to implement changes that can improve and eventually, reduce cell phones in the classroom.
Right. So Jeremy, kind of circling back to this, in the update for the letter in support of the Way All Day policy, which you and your co-authors shared and updated about the policy that currently is in place and will go into effect this coming school year. So sort of hearing that from Reiner's perspective, as a parent, do you still agree that, there can be a sort of step-by-step process or a gradual implementation of a Way All Day policy? And this I'll ask you both, do high schoolers also need an Way All Day policy?
Yeah, so high schoolers absolutely need an Away All Day policy. Big picture, if you look at this nationally, the state of New York and the state of California have adopted Away All Day policies, right? True Away All Day policies for all grade levels. The state of Virginia has done that as well. Howard County and Baltimore City more locally have done that as well. So this is happening and sweeping the nation, true Away All Day policies, right? More specifically, we were so thrilled to see MCEAs take a leadership position on this, to have the union be out in front on this. It was wonderful to see. I know 90 or 83% of teachers surveyed by the NEA support true away all day policies for K through 12, but it was great to see the advocacy by the union. It's really important. In terms of the update to the policy, the process was not great done by MCPS, right? We were told that there would be more input. We were told there would be more opportunities to engage. Those opportunities did not materialize. The policy was rolled out on a Friday afternoon, and we still don't know what is the process to enforce and implement the policy truly, and how is that going to play out? We also don't understand why away all day was the right choice for elementary school and middle school students, but somehow the wrong choice for high school students, according to MCPS. The last thing I'll say is the policy went forward and is positive for elementary and middle school students, but it's a huge backward step for high school, because previously, as Reiner was saying, that there was a pilot going, and there was different schools taking different approaches, and that data and that variety was very important. The new policy has eliminated, it appears, the flexibility of principals to keep phones out of the high schools if they choose to.
Well, let's talk about that. Is this, will this be revised come a year from now? Do you believe that maybe, as Jeremy said, that this is a step backwards for high schoolers?
So looking at the pilot, and we contacted teachers who were part of the pilot programs, and they had a lot of successes around those little baggies that you can lock your phone in. I forget what they're called right now. And that's kind of where we welcome the policy that MCPS rolled out. We support a lot of it. One thing we are kind of looking for is kind of what's in the details. And I've been in discussions with some people in MCPS, and they've explained that there's one group that is going to work on the policy idea, and then there are budget items that are going to buy the potential phone caddies for classrooms, or the lock bags to lock phones for a progressive discipline policy that I think they implemented at Richard Montgomery High School. Don't quote me on that. And so that is in the works. I know they also are considering revamping their student discipline policy, and they might roll that out this summer. So there are kind of those details regarding how they're going to implement this change, though I understand that it's not, what some people dream is away all day. The way I see it is, from very far out, it looks like there's not much change. I have my colleagues coming up to me and they're like, Reiner, you didn't do anything. Like, well, there's no change. And I said, wait till summer, where we make the sausage, and the individual high schools are looking in their summer ILTs, their leadership groups, and they're going to make policies for next year. The verbiage and the terms and the ideas that are in the new policy will really help principals and school leaders make policies that really limit cell phones in high schools in a new way. And then we'll see also staff development opportunities and things like that will come out. I hope.
So something that I want to end on is talking about parents who are actually against these cell phone bans in schools, out of concern of getting in touch with their kids if there's ever a case of an emergency in schools. Do either of you know what the policy guideline is for when parents want to reach their kids during these cell phone bans and there's an emergency in place?
I think the policy guide is that the school will communicate every 20 minutes in a crisis with the community. And the police and the data that we looked at when we were working on this resolution, because safety was one of our larger concerns, was that police do not want the cell phone in the hands of students in a major crisis. That the phone caddy systems in the classrooms might help, because there could be a situation where there's not a big incident and the cell phones and the rumors are kind of blowing up the incident and could cause crisis. So there is a lot of, it's not necessarily going to keep you safer if you have your cell phone.
Okay, so it's actually safer without the phones.
That's kind of how I come to understand what has been communicated from different policing organizations.
Yeah. I would agree. So I was a former Marine. I carried a weapon in combat. Having a phone in a crisis situation is the absolute last thing that I would want any child to have. Because in those situations, what kids need to do is listen for instructions, be quiet, and keep their wits about them. Being on a phone and calling a parent is not good for the kids. I understand why parents also want that connectivity. That makes sense to me. And so the question that I would ask is, for the garden variety parent, do you want to be able to contact your kid for any specific reason? Like, is grandma getting a cancer diagnosis? Is there a legal issue that you need to be sort of in touch with that child for? In those situations, I'm sure that the principals would be able to have like very good sort of solutions for those individuals. But as a general matter, right, the kids need to be focused on their studies and having the need to be able to contact your child because the practice has changed. We all grew up in an era where when those changes, you would finish school and you would get the updates, and that's where we should go back to.
Well, let me sort of push back on that, because the era that maybe you both grew up in is not the era that we're in now. You know, gun violence is the leading cause of death for American kids and teens, and that's according to the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions.
But not in schools, not in school.
No, but there are a lot of school shootings. I mean, in March, a 13-year-old was charged for threatening a school shooting at Parkland Middle. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you have a high schooler at Walt Whitman. Mm-hmm. You know, if there is an emergency, you know, are you trying to get in contact with your child?
So look, big picture. They've rolled this out, an away all day policy in the city of Los Angeles, right? They've rolled it out in the city of Baltimore, away all day for the high schools. They've thought about these issues that have much more potential risk than Montgomery County. But to answer your question, no. If there's an issue, I'm going to trust the system, and I'm going to trust the school, and I'm going to trust the principal there, who I adore, to communicate with me appropriately when there's information to share, and not to communicate, as Rana was saying, rumors and all sorts of stuff that really sends parents and communities down into very dark places when they're actually not accurate.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So we've heard from a parent advocate and a co-chair of the MCEA's Cell Phone Policy Working Group. Now, we're joined by some students for their thoughts on banning phones in schools. We're joined by junior Hedda and seniors Hannah and Sophie. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So really quickly, what are your stances on the banning of phones in schools? Hedda.
So I'm super against it. I definitely want to keep my phone in the classroom. I'm big on no ban.
Okay. Hannah?
I support this advocates.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sophie?
I'm kind of in the middle. Like, there's some pros and cons to it, so I'm not like, I don't know, I'm not like fully on one side.
Okay, so we have a mixed bag. Okay, we have for, we have against, and we have undecided. So, Hedda, you know, you're very passionate about not having this ban take place. So you are a junior, so this coming school year, you will have to deal with a ban in school. So do you know what exactly the policy is?
Not really, honestly, because we have one currently that is very loosely enforced, like an away all day, where you're not supposed to use it during class, only during passing period and lunch, which I gathered is kind of what the policy is.
So that's
exactly.
So yes, so the policy for high schoolers that is going to be implemented this coming school year is that phones will be banned during instructional time, but you will be able to use it in between classes and during lunch. So how do you feel about it now?
I think it is an okay thing to say, but in implementation, it is never a good idea. I don't think I don't know, I think there's a lot of downtime during classes that you pull out your phone. I think a lot of things happen during the day that you can't account for. You know, the world doesn't stop just because you're in school. You still have like news coming in, like something at home happens maybe. I just think there's a lot of benefits to having your phone just on you. You know, you don't have to be, using it when the teacher's talking, but I think just having it with you, at least like on your desk, in your lap, is like a sense of security and also just like realistic.
Interesting. So you're talking about a sense of security on being connected, on knowing what's going on. Hannah, you are against, I'm sorry, it can be confusing a little bit, for against the ban, but you are for the ban. Can you elaborate a little bit why?
Yeah, so I came from Japan, where it's like really strict about usage of smartphone, and once I came to America, I feel like I was so surprised, and at the beginning, I try not to use the phone to not miss what the teacher says. And I wanted to have a good grade, so I just try not to use and be like concentrated for the lecture. But like right now, I'm getting used to it, and I sometimes use smartphone during class, and I'm aware that I'm not doing well right now in school compared to like a few years ago.
So, a few years ago when you were in Japan?
Yeah.
Okay. And in Japan, so it was a total ban?
Yeah.
Okay. So from the beginning of the school day to the end of the school day, you didn't have your phone on you?
Yeah. Of course, it depends on the school, but where I attended was no.
Okay. Okay. And Sophie, so you're undecided. You see the pros and cons of each stance. Hearing Hedda and Hannah's perspective, how are you feeling right now, hearing their perspectives?
Okay, let me jump on to what Hedda said. I mean, I understand, like you said, you feel a sense of security or whatnot, and like I do get that, but at the same time, like, do you feel like even after like you're done your work and like you don't really have anything else to do, like I feel like it would be better for students to like, try and see what they can do more, to engage themselves more into like, class time and all that stuff. But I'm not sure, like, even what you're saying, like, I do feel a bit sloppy sometimes. Like, sometimes I'm like on my phone the whole period, not finishing any work, and it's just like I'm still stuck in the middle. Like, I'm not sure.
Right. So are you guys aware of the studies on cell phone usage in schools and how it might affect mental health? Because it's interesting, because you touched on, the sense of security and sort of a need to be connected and stay connected and informed, which is valid. We live in a time where, it's very hard to disconnect, and that, news is important, but how do you feel like it impacts your mental health, especially that sort of need you talked about?
I would say that I think that since we already have like social media and everything, that like if that wasn't being used at all, I think that'd be different. But when things are still occurring and you just don't have access to it, I think that's like the issue for me. And if I use my phone, I get to like know what's happening, process it a little bit more, and something which sounds a little like childish or whatever, but like I get to text my friend during class and be like, oh my God, this just happened, and we can be like, okay, we'll debrief at lunch. Like, I really value being able to connect with, like, if I don't have a lot of friends in that class, to connect with someone that I know and be like, this just happened in my life.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that you sort of bring up that example of like connecting with your friends at school through your phones, even though they attend the same school. So could you not, with this ban, one of the things that advocates are saying is that it will allow you guys to actually speak to each other face to face more. Do you still think that?
I really do not agree, honestly. I think that there are, if you're not on your phone, you're playing games on your computer. I don't think that taking away the phone is going to make people talk to each other more. I think it would make people go to the bathroom a lot more to use their phone in secret, for sure. Like, I know, like, admitting it, I definitely would. It's like, I don't know, like
Right.
someone told me something, I would just go in the hallway, text my friend, come
Gotcha.
back. I know, even in classes where the teacher is stricter on phone usage, I just start playing crosswords instead. I don't turn to my friend and talk. It's not as normalized now, and I know that the ban would seek to aid that, but I think that it's so enrooted in our school culture that I just don't see how a ban would do
Gotcha.
anything.
Okay. Hannah, so talking about culture, school culture, as someone who is from a culture where phones are banned, how do you respond to that? What have you sort of seen the culture be here versus, what you've experienced in terms of connection and connecting and distractions?
Yeah, so here, like, high schooler in the US are always be distracted by something, I think, compared to Japanese high schooler who are not allowed to use phone. The US high schooler are always in their phone, texting to somebody, and I feel like they need to build a resilience to themselves to not to touch the phone just 45 minutes. Like, yeah, I think.
Do you think that maybe American students are more addicted to their phone? Would you use that word to describe that? Yeah.
Yeah, addicted, and they have to regulate themselves because it is important in the future. They can't use their phone, like if your business partner are using phone in like once in 5 minutes, then I can't trust that person because like I feel like they are not
fully engaged, maybe?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Sophie, hearing these perspectives, are you shifting one way or another at all? Or, what, as someone who's undecided and can see, the pros and cons on both sides, how are you feeling right now,
I'm like shifting for the ban. Like you were touching on like cyberbullying, right? And I feel like cyberbullying has been like, especially like with the cell phones, like people using them like all the time during classes. It's like it's been normalized nowadays. And like there's people like snapping pics randomly of people, like making jokes, like even like, what is it called? Even when teachers go up to students and they're like, can you like put your cell phone away? Like sometimes it's like a recurring problem. Like teachers are always like telling students, can you put your phones away? Please be engaged in class. And that's why like in my English class right now, like half of the students have like D's only because they're always on their phones, not listening, not paying attention. And like, I think, yeah, the phone's the problem.
Gotcha. Well, let's do a little experiment right now. You guys all have your phones on you, which I asked them to bring them specifically for this purpose. So if you guys don't mind pulling out your phones, and I want to see how much time you guys actually spend on your phones. Hedda, you're laughing quite a bit.
Yeah, I did this in one of my classes. So we'll see.
So yeah, if you go to I think for iPhones, you go to your settings and you scroll down and there's the screen time. So that should tell you.
For today or daily average for the week?
For the day today's Thursday. Yeah, let's do the weekly average.
Weekly average
Yeah.
was 7 hours and 16 minutes, which is down 12% from last week.
Yay, 12%.
Mine was 5 hours and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Since I just got my phone back like last week or 2 weeks ago, it was 3 hours.
Okay. So we have a range here. So, seeing those, because I also, for several reasons, I also have to spend time on my phone, and I'm personally trying to get my screen time down. Do any of you feel like you want to get your screen time down?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to use my phone to watch the YouTube to learn English or like for studying.
Okay.
But I'm also using social media like an hour or 2 hours per day, so I want to reduce that time.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I could be doing more things with my life, like try and be more ahead, especially since I'm going to college. Like, yeah, I want to cut time on like Instagram and TikTok. So.
Even though I had the highest daily average, I'm not that worried about it. I do a lot of activities, I'm at volleyball, I'm an intern at Montgomery County Media, I do robotics, I'm involved in a lot of things that do give me a lot of like stimulation other than my phone. And so when I have downtime, I'm gonna use my social media, I'm gonna unwind with some TikTok, some Snapchat. And I'm gonna check my phone like periodically throughout the day too. But with all the things around me, I still don't feel as though it's become a huge issue, really, to me. And I think most people can see, like teenagers have this like trope of like screenagers, like addicted, and you definitely—
I've never heard that term before. Screenagers.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's a really fun one.
So you think that's a stereotype?
I think that it is true in a lot of scenarios that adults like are shocked by, like if you walk in on like a hangout and both people are on their phones. But I think that there's so many of us that are so involved in a lot of different things that when people see you, when you're out in public or when you're not actively doing something, they would always see you on your phone. And so it like perpetuates the like visual of like teenager glued to it.
Oh, so you think so let me see if I'm understanding you correctly. For you, it's more of like a individual, like case by case basis where, your screen time like is a number that doesn't always indicate what you're doing and what you're up to as a person.
And also, there's so much time in a day. My screen time definitely goes up when I stay up a lot later. Not necessarily, I'm not staying up because I'm watching TikTok or whatever, but there are days where I know I have a lot of work to get done, so I stay up a little later and I take little breaks, like mind breaks, to watch some TikTok. So the screen time goes up just because I'm doing more things.
Okay.
I'm having a longer day.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. As a sort of the finality to today's show, Sophie, have you sort of leaned anyone one way or another?
I could say I'm still in the middle, but I'm leaning for the man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And that is our show for today.
Thank you.
Well, there's still a lot of room left for debate, but for this coming school year, we'll see just how much this new policy affects and impacts students at MCPS. I am your host, Andréa Durán, and you're watching MCM. Thank you for joining us. See you next time.